Hey, welcome to a new episode of Skin in the Game. This is your host, John Cimperman, with my co-host,
Tim O'Shei. John, you sound really good through that screen that I'm looking at right now.
Well, we had to do, everybody's been on the road, but we were fortunate a few weeks back to bring in Sabres, Detroit Red Wings alumni, Danny Gare, actually in studio, and can't wait to get to our conversation with Danny.
Yeah, such a fun conversation, John. And along with being a hockey legend in those two cities, Danny's a great businessman. We're gonna dig deep into that, and in a project, a company he has going right now that is making the sport of hockey available to people who may not be able to access the ice time otherwise.
Right. And we talk a lot on Skin in the Game, about the business of sports. And we've even, Tim, in past episodes talked about kind of how the athlete evolves post career. Where do they go post career? And I think that the conversation with Danny is going to be enlightening for a lot of our listeners because, they would know Danny from his, 354 goals on the ice. They would know Danny from the number 18 in the rafters at the arena in Buffalo. Maybe even know him from his broadcasting days, both down in Florida as well in Western New York. But what they might not know is, what he is doing as a business person now. So, can't wait to kind of unravel that.
Yeah, and we'll get into this, but it's really instructive too for what athletes can do and frankly need to do during their career and shortly after their playing career ends to set up the rest of their life, right? So we're going to dig into that, and Danny. It should be said, John. Danny did these things. He set up that post hockey career at a time when there wasn't such an emphasis on it for guys in his position. Nowadays, at minimum, athletes hear from their players association, from their league, from their teams, like, hey, this is not going to last forever, and we're going to give you resources to set yourself up post sports, post playing. That was not happening, at least not in any broad level back when Danny was playing. So he was ahead of the game on that, and I know people are going to love this conversation. Before we get to that, though, John, you are a guy who's got perspective on, I'm going to put this like very plainly, where sports arenas and stadiums should be located. And one of my favorite things to do is ask you, hey, John, what would you do with an arena, with the arena, in Buffalo, or where would you put a Buffalo Bills stadium, or Cleveland, your hometown, is going to build a new football stadium. Where should it go? So I'm going to pass it over to you to fill everyone in on some of the news that we've been talking about, but I'm eager for your take.
Well, yeah, you're kind of putting me in a box here because, as you know, I'm always, and in the work I've done, a big fan of building the sports complexes in the heart of the city, right? Accessible
Which you did, and I want people to know you did that in Los Angeles,
and
for
in Cleveland,
example,
right? With
and in
the
Cleveland. Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, and for our listeners, Cleveland, finally, the city of Cleveland and the Haslams, the owners of the Cleveland, looks like they buried the hatchet because it's been a rough 6 months.
Yeah, it is.
Agree, yeah, and they've agreed to allow the Cleveland Browns to build a stadium in Brook Park, which is about 12 miles outside of the city. And I know, Tim, you're going to say to me, "Oh, John, you must hate that because they're moving out of the city." Well, actually, in this case, I do think it's a good idea. And let me tell you why. Number one is they're opening up the lakefront in downtown Cleveland for 365 days of activation versus 8 days, right? That's prime real estate. Open up that real estate, condos, development, let people enjoy the Great Lake. That's number one. Number two, I mentioned Brook Park. That's actually the home of, the Cleveland airport proximity. And it's also on, get this, on the rail line. So you have accessibility directly out to the stadium in the suburbs. And then if you've seen these very aggressive plans in Cleveland, I mean, you're talking about, they're going to be building, I think as many of our listeners would know, is kind of a a title town development around it. So it checks a lot of the boxes, but for me, it opens up the waterfront for Clevelanders, and it really has super accessibility for public transportation, air transportation, however you need to get there.
And not to put I'm gonna apologize for putting you in a box. I actually here's the box I would put you in, John, and tell me if I've got this right. When and I'm serious when I say I do like to quiz you on what to do with sports venues around the country because you have spent a career operating in that space, right? So here's what I've learned from you, and I'm gonna fact check myself here. Number one, the stadium needs to go in a place where people can get to it. As obvious as that sounds, it's not always the case, right? People, and when I say people can get to it, it means they can do more than drive. They can take buses, they can take a railway, they can take public transportation, maybe even they can walk, right? But people have got to be able to get to it, number one. Number two, the development that's going to go around that stadium needs to be needed in that city. And there needs to be the infrastructure to support it and the population to support it. In other words, if you're going to build a title town, and that's a Green Bay reference, of course, but if you're going to build a title town around a stadium in Cleveland, make sure there's enough Clevelanders who are going to want to go to that and keep that place busy without drawing too much away from other entertainment hubs in Cleveland. Do I have
Right.
that right?
You do, and enough activity around it so you could support, 300 nights of entertainment versus just 8 or 10. Here's the other thing, Tim. You got that all right, but here's the other thing that is really interesting. Is part of this development, the city of Cleveland, the county, Cuyahoga County, as well as the Browns, they're working with the Regional Transit Authority to invest about $40 million into a rail line, an extension for the building, and I think that, again, that's super valuable. If you've ever been to a game and a Yankees game at the Bronx or headed out to Wrigley Field in Chicago, I know people love tailgating, but guess what? Those train rides into Wrigley can be an awful lot of fun too. So they're building the infrastructure around the stadium. It's going to be really interesting, but it looks like it's all moving forward for the Cleveland Browns to play football in Brook Park, Ohio.
It's good to see that happening. And just as a side note, when we've talked so much on this program, John, about the public giving money to what would otherwise be a private project that could or should be funded by billionaires, right? So, New York State and Erie County giving 850 million toward a Buffalo Bills stadium project is an example we've talked about a lot. In Cleveland, and this is a comparatively smaller example of money going the other way, but the Haslams are giving money to the public to help develop that waterfront that's going to be open once their current stadium gets torn down. I think it's $100 million.
Yeah, no, no. I'm glad you brought that up. It's almost like it's a kind of the exit clause, right? We're going to let you go to the suburbs, but you need to write us $100 million check, which is first of all going to help pay for the demolition of the current stadium, but also it is going to help then build the development. So the city of Cleveland, I guess good for them, negotiated a pretty good deal. If the Browns are going to move 12 miles, at least they got something to show for it. And that they really have some seed funds to use that, and develop that lakefront. So, I think there's a lot of sports stories of fighting and threatening to move and this, that, and the other thing. In this case, I think cooler heads prevailed.
Yeah, it worked out, and it's in sign it off on this. How incredible for the lakefront area in Cleveland too. Like right now, you've got the Science Center, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and a stadium that is used only a handful of days and nights a year. Right, that's going to open up so much space on it. And I know I've been there, and you live there. What a beautiful waterfront. So it's exciting to see all around. And
Yeah.
congrats
Yeah.
to your hometown, John.
Well, no, and I think there's something to be learned for all of the markets, whether our listeners are in Hamilton, whether our listeners are in Buffalo, Rochester and beyond. I just think, see what's happening in these other markets, kind of these Great Lakes markets, and we can kind of learn from them. Um, and we don't have time because we do need to get into our conversation with Danny Gare. But I think coming up in the next few weeks, Tim, we do need to talk about arena development, renovations. There's a great building being kind of rebuilt up in Hamilton, and we need to talk about that. There's talks of renovations in Buffalo at the KeyBank Center. So I do want to tee up that discussion in the next few weeks here on Skin in the Game.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we do that, John, we can plan to talk about, some of the good work that's been done too. I think of TD Garden in Boston, right? That's one that, I've spent and you've spent a lot of time at, and we've talked about on Skin in the Game previously too, right? So that'll be a good discussion for you and I and for the guests that we'll be bringing in, and looking forward to that. But in the meantime, time to talk hockey, career transitions, and synthetic ice with Danny Gare.
Yeah, number 18 is going to be in studio here, so stay tuned on Skin in the Game. Hey, welcome back to Skin in the Game. I would like to welcome in studio number 18 from your Buffalo Sabres, the one, the only, Danny Gare.
Good to see you guys.
How are you, Danny?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm real good because the Bills had an unbelievable game last night. I don't know when this is going to be aired, but what an amazing game against Baltimore. Come back.
Yeah, this will be aired a couple of weeks later. But I
still,
will tell you, were you there? I was there.
You were there? You didn't leave?
I didn't leave.
No,
I was
okay.
down in the tunnel.
Oh.
At the end.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to be walking into a losing locker room.
Right.
That changed obviously in the
That's
last
amazing,
second. But yeah, so I'm going on about 4 hours sleep.
Wow.
And I'm counting on you guys to bring the
We'll
energy
carry it.
today.
We'll carry
I
it.
had a feeling you might.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Danny and I go back quite a few years. Actually, we were reminiscing. I think we first met back in '99 when I was running the marketing for the Sabres, and Danny was in the booth, around the booth, on the rink. So
anybody, Danny, who can bring the dirt on John is an especially welcome guest here.
That's going to be a different episode.
Yeah, that comes after we turn the
that's
on.
after a few beers maybe. But, no, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, John and I go back a long ways. He's been a good friend for many years, and we get to play some golf and hang out. And
talk some hockey.
And
well, what we want to do here, we do want to talk a little hockey. We want to talk about the business side of it and what you're now doing at business side. But first, I did have a hockey related question. I'm just not sure this ratio is correct, but let me think. Career goals 354, around there,
something like that. Yeah.
Penalty minutes well over 1,200.
Yeah, I probably could have hit the 400 goal easily if I wouldn't have stayed out of the penalty box. But back then it was a tough man's game, and they all wanted to go after me, so I just had to stand up for myself.
I got when I moved to Buffalo, New York. I think you and I had a chance to meet at a few Sabres alumni golf tournaments, and I had friends of mine that wanted to join our foursome, but they couldn't because they were still intimidated by you.
Well, after my career got over, I was happy not to be able to go after guys like Schultz and Selesky and Gillies and so forth. So it was kind of a nice thing.
Yeah, you got to keep the broadcast face.
Yeah,
going,
you got to
right?
keep the face alive and teeth cleaned. And,
right. So you. For our listeners in Southern Ontario, our listeners here in Western New York, you decided actually to stay in Western New York and actually raise a family here in Buffalo.
Yeah, I did. It was interesting. Late after I was traded to Detroit, and I played there for 5 years, and it was a difficult time for me, and my wife at the time was pregnant, and I remember going there, and they weren't a good team, and it was a shock to be traded, to be one, with Schoenfeld. It was my dad was dying of ALS at the time too, so it was a tough year, very difficult year. But then when my daughter Danielle was born the following May, it was who cared, and then Mike Ilitch bought the team, and he made me the captain, and we went on to make the playoffs back to back a few times, or two times when Yzerman came. Stevie sat next to me. I was 18, he was 19. So I ended up, coming back to Buffalo. We still had a place here, and ended up building a home in Lotus Bay. And we lived on the lake and enjoyed it here, and became, working with Channel 49 a little bit when back in those days, and worked with Empire Sports Network and had a restaurant out there. So it kept me busy, and the kids were growing, and it was it was a good transition. But I always wanted to stay and be a part of the game as much as I could.
Well, I talked to you. You were born and raised out in British Columbia, right?
Right, Nelson, British Columbia.
And I think you've said to me that kind of the feel, the vibe, of Western New York kind of reminded you a lot of that of how you were raised.
Very much so, and I think although much larger, my town was a big town, but I've always felt people are people, and you can relate to people, and it's always been known Buffalo is a city of good neighbors, and I think that's just how it all came about. And when I played here, it was like. It was hell. It was like awesome. We never missed the playoffs. We sold out every game. We went to the finals my first year against Philadelphia. We won a couple of Wales trophies and championships, which would be now the President's Trophy for most points. And we had great teams and great personality, and the fans just embraced us.
Do you miss it?
Oh, it's been too long now, but I think. The first 5 years are the years that you miss it, because you start playing when you're 4 or 5 years old, and then you play competitive hockey when I left home at 16 to play junior in Calgary, Alberta, played there, and then I come into here, Punch drafts me in 74, and come make the team, which was amazing, and then score my first goal in 18 seconds against Bobby Orr and the Boston Bruins. It was like. Maybe I belong. It was like, and we had an outstanding year that year. I scored 30 goals, was runner-up for Rookie of the Year, and we go to the finals and unfortunately lose to Bernie Perrant and the Philadelphia Flyers, which I'll never forget. But I thought it was going to happen every year. I did. Yeah. We were that good of a team, and we just, we had injuries, we had situations, goaltenders got hurt at bad times, and the Islanders came on. Montreal was good, and just couldn't get over the hump.
Yeah. It really, and I mean, a rookie year like that, Danny, just sets the tone. In a career like the one you had, and so many great players have, can, I think, set people up. And I've found this with athletes I've talked to, and this is where I was going with the "do you miss it" question. It can be a tough transition out, and it seems now we're talking decades later, and we're gonna dig into what you've been into. It seems like you've been able to build a really exciting, fulfilling life post-hockey, which is certainly not a guarantee for guys.
No, there was no education for us after hockey. I'll give the NHL Alumni Association now a lot of credit, because there's after programs after guys get out, whether it's in fact I did do some of those when they started, like broadcasting, public speaking. Went to drive to Toronto and would take courses, and it was great. It was a great opportunity for me. Got myself, better acclimated in those situations, and had a number of guys that were in the same position as me, and got to hang out with them, and I think it helped the transition, and especially in broadcast, it was great. Because I had no schooling and understanding. I had guys like Rick Jenneret and Ted Darling that helped a little bit when they helped, but they were busy doing what they had to do. And then I had guys, producers like Joe Pinter and other people in the organization that helped me along the way too. So it was a learning experience. But anytime something's learning and you're live like you were on ice, it's fun, and it gets you going. It gets you, it gets the heart pumping, and I enjoyed every minute of the broadcasting. It was like it's showtime, baby. Let's go.
You got the butterflies.
It's showtime,
right.
and I remember the first time I'm talking and I hear in my IFB the producer talking, and I'm going, what the hell is that? Like I'm going, I'm talking now. You're disrupting my train of thought. Don't talk to me when I'm talking. Wait till I'm done. So there was always that in and out. But no, I enjoyed it very much, and I got to work with some of the best. I worked with Rick, as I mentioned. General RJ was amazing. In Tampa, I went there and worked with John Kelly, who was the first. We were the first broadcasters for the Lightning. I went to Columbus and worked with Jeff Rimmer, who was a career broadcaster for the Capitals in Florida, and then with the Blue Jackets. But and then there was guys like Brian Duff and people of that sort, and just really Howard Simon, back in the day.
Right.
People like that really helped me and mentored me.
Yeah. Well, Danny, before we get into too much of the future, there's a story you told me when you were drafted, and we talk about today's NHL, Tim, right? It's lights, it's camera, it's action, it's a show, right? Well, back in the day, just for our listeners, how did you find out you were drafted as an NHL player?
Well, let me just say something prior to that, because that year was the first year the WHA came in, and the WHA drafted players 2 weeks before the NHL draft. My best friend and one of my kid I grew up with and was number 1 by the WHA, Pat Price. He was from my hometown. So I was drafted in the second round by Winnipeg Jets, and John Ferguson was the general manager, the old Montreal Canadian, good guy. So I didn't think much about it. I was always waiting because the NHL was what I always wanted to, and this was new, the WHA. I did get a call from John Ferguson and said, draft. And I said, well, John, appreciate it, but I'm leaning towards what the NHL draft is. So 2 weeks later, the NHL goes underage to match what the WHA. They had to, or else they would have lost a lot of great prospects and people that the WHA took, some of them, and the NHL took some of them. So that year, I was a 29th pick overall. And by the way, ESPN, someone just texted me I was the best 29th pick ever.
Nice.
Just saw it about a week ago. Yeah. So anyways, but a little plug. But so I'm like, I get prior to the draft, my good friend and my teammate Grant Mulvey, who played with Chicago, my roommate in Calgary, calls me up and wishes me good luck. Well, he went number 6 to Chicago. I went 29. There were 13 underage picks in the first round. Like Lee Fogland, who came to Buffalo, he was an underage pick. There was a number of guys that. So I'm like, this was prior to me finding out I get drafted. This was after, I should say, and I mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning in Nelson, and I was one of my jobs. Dad was big in making sure the lawn and the yard looked good, and we didn't have like flat lawns because we lived on hills because a lot of mountains, and so I'm pushing the mower up, and it's rah, rah, rah. And my mom, and I'm about, 50 yards or 50 feet from where my mom was on the deck. On the porch, she yells out, "Danny, Danny, Danny." And I can barely hear her because of the mower. And I look back and see her, she's waving her hands and screaming, "Danny." I said, "What?" I turn the mower off. "Punch Himlack's on the phone." I said, "Oh. Okay," because there's a 3-hour time change, right? This was about 11 in the morning, and I'm sweating. It's hot. And I go running in, my shirt's off, and get on the phone. He goes, "Danny, Punch Himlack here. Wanted to let you know the Sabres, we just drafted you in the second round, number 29. And I go, "Oh, that's great, Punch. I'm so excited to hear that. Thank you so much. You'll be hearing from John Anderson," he said, "in the next hour or two to let you know what, the situation and what blah, blah, blah." So, yeah, I was mowing the lawn when I got drafted. And I remember Marty Biron telling me, he says, "You were mowing the lawn?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Most guys are decked out in $1,000 suits, at the arena where they're getting drafted with all their family. But anyways, it just tells you how the climate has changed in that.
Yeah, that's it. You got me thinking back to, 2018 in Dallas. I was shadowing Rasmus Dahlin and his family because he was, the clear number one pick overall in the draft by the Sabres. And at one point, Mrs. Dahlin's handing me her phone so I could take the family photos. And, they knew where he was going, but that was happening with probably 50 or 60 guys.
Other guys, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You were cutting the lawn. So.
Yeah, I was cutting the lawn, and I did a pretty good job, finished it up with whatever. So long story short, I'll tell you a quick story, John. From that, there was a lot of, we had agents that came across Canada and were really, promoting, obviously, their talents. And they went to our owner of the Calgary Centennials, who was Scotty Monroe at the time, and said, we'd like to have some of your players. And he got a piece back, I think, from it, which is normal. But I remember John Ferguson saying, Punch had offered me a real good contract, 5 years. I think it was $600,000 for 5 years. 150. This was 50 years ago.
That's a big. Yeah.
It was good money. I mean, $150,000 signing bonus. I mean, it was good money. So John Ferguson called me back after Punch made that and offer, and he says, I'll match it. So I was, and WHA, they had Bobby Hull then in Winnipeg. They had Ulf Nielsen, Anders Hedberg. They had a good team, and it was Western Canada, and I just wanted to play in the NHL. I mean, I grew up watching Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night, Montreal and Toronto. And I'll never forget the year before, my last year junior in Calgary, which I had a great year. I broke the record for goals by a right winger, 68. I broke the record for penalty minutes, 238. I was the first All-Star. But I saw the Sabres play the Montreal Canadiens. And it was the thank you Sabres. There was 6 games they lost. It was the first year they went to the playoffs. And I'm looking at it, I'm hearing René Robert's name. I'm hearing Rick Martin's name. I'm hearing Gilbert Perreault. I'm hearing Jim Schoenfeld. I'm hearing, guys that I'd never heard about before. I mean, you heard, they were stars, and they were a young team, and they were up and coming. And I'm thinking, when I got drafted, by Punch, I'm thinking about that. And that was the reason why I ended up coming to Buffalo. And Punch was great. He said, Danny, I'm flying out. I think the draft was middle of May, and he came out on Father's Day, June 14th. Signed me, had the contract, flew to Calgary from Toronto. I went in from Nelson to fly into Calgary, signed it. I was with him for about 45 minutes. And then he flew back to Toronto because it was Father's Day, but he came out. So I'm waiting for my flights at 4 o'clock to come back to Nelson. And I can't buy a beer. I'm not old enough. I can't do anything to celebrate this guy. And I remember I called my mom and dad, and my mom picks up the phone. She goes, Danny, how'd it go? I said, everything went great. I got a check for $150,000 in my pocket. Don't lose that check, she says. So, yeah, it was pretty. And then I come here to Buffalo, and it was just right off the get-go. It went, like you say, my first year. Who would ever think I'd go to the finals and have the year I had with Luce and Ramsey, on a checking line. So
yeah, that's so crazy. So we ready to jump to I don't know about the future, John, but I'd like to talk about like the future from athletes into
absolutely
into that post hockey career.
Yeah.
So Danny, when you decided or recognized or when you were told, however it all worked out, that the playing career was over, what thought process were you going through to figure out what would be next?
Well, I have to preempt this. That was the word I was looking for earlier. But after I got released by the Red Wings, my contract was up with them. And I still felt that I could give it another year or two. In my mind, I think everybody thinks that. I mean, look at Mr. Rogers from Pittsburgh,
Right.
Everybody thinks that, and my back wasn't bad, I was working out a lot, and I remember we were building the house on the lake, and my My wife Marianne at the time said, I said, well, I want to give it one more shot. I think I can, I'd like to win a cup before I'm done, because I was close and I thought, well, she says, well, who do you think's going to win the cup? I said, Edmonton. Well, they didn't win it last year. She goes like this. And I knew Wayne Gretzky. I'd played with him. I knew Mike Barnett, his agent. I knew Glenn Sather a bit, And so I ended up, I called up Mike Barnett, who worked with IMG and Wayne and had some guys. And he said, why don't you just give Glenn a call and see what he says, And so I called up Glenn Sather. He gave me his number, and I talked to Glenn. Glenn was great. He says, how's everything going? His family's good, body's pretty good. And I always said that I'd heard rumors that they were trying to get me even when I was in Detroit because they needed a winger at the time, a veteran winger. And these guys, they'd won 2 cups and they were young and they were having fun and enjoying. And I just thought that I could maybe, say to them, because I knew Mark Messier too, and the good guys, we got to tighten this up and, because you're going to win many cups, So anyways, he says, what do you want, a contract or a tryout? I said, I'd love a contract. He goes, I'll get back to you. He goes, okay. So he sends me, calls me and says, I'll give you a tryout. So this was in June. I worked out the hardest I worked out all summer. I was in great shape. I went to Edmonton, was invited, 100 guys. Well, I hadn't done that since rookie season. But he put me in the main dressing room next to Messier, and I was the only guy in it for like 10 days. And ended up making the cut to get to the main camp, and then fortunately made the team. And he said to me, Glenn said, look, I know, we don't know how it's going to go, but I'll sign you to January 1st. And I said, no, I'm here. I want to. He says, okay, Dan, I got him mad. And I said, look, I made your team. I'm here to help you win a cup. And so he says, I'll sign it to March 1st. So March 1st, okay, fine. So we're in first place, March 1st, everything's good. And he brings in Yaroslav Puzar, who was a guy that played in Czechia that won the cup with him 2 years before that. And I didn't play for some games. And I got upset about it, and we met. And he said, Danny, he says, what do you want to do? I said, well, I don't want to. I told you I want to win a cup. I'm here to, I'll go to the minors if I have to. So he says, I can't guarantee if you go to the minors that you're gonna. And you had to play one shift to get a ring. Long story short, I retired. I said I'm done. I poolside from the first place team with Messier and Gretzky with champagne and shrimp cocktails, and that's the way I left the game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was pretty special there. And then when retiring, coming back was just getting into trying to do stuff. It was like.
So you came back home here to home, Buffalo. Yeah.
Buffalo, yeah, and I built a house. Marianne's parents had 6 acres in Lotus Bay, and they wanted to sell. And I said, "How about Grandpa if I buy half of it, build it, I'll pay you for your lot, And so we worked it out, and then I was just driving a lot because it's a ways out. I worked at Channel 49 with Mr. Mooney, Seymour the Fourth.
Right.
Linda Lynch was there. I don't know if you remember her, but and then I did some broadcasts, at Empire. Then I had a restaurant, so I was busy, and the kids were growing. They were 4 and 5, and then they were in dancing and whatever. So there was a lot of running around, and I kind of enjoyed the years I had out there. It was a beautiful place. So,
how did you come to opening a restaurant? And I will tell you, I want to tell you, people remember it. Yeah. To this day, I told a couple of people, my wife being one of them, like, hey, we're having Danny Gare on this week. I said, in her case, my mom and dad used to go to his restaurant all the time. Yeah. They used to take me.
Yeah, no, it was interesting because being out that far, my neighbor was Richie Alberts, who ran Mickey Rats and Captain Kids. He was my neighbor, and Richie I'd known for years from hanging out in the bars in the city and whatever. And he said, the old beef and bottle here is for sale. That's what the name of it was. And I said, oh, really? He says, well, save me driving all the way in to go for a beer or having dinner somewhere. So we threw some money in. It wasn't crazy and took it over. And it was fun as hell. I mean, we had people there that would come from all over. And I remember Janice Oken, the old critic from the Buffalo News. She gave us 4.5 stars, and she'd always come in or camouflage or something, or you couldn't recognize her. And I said, I showed.
It was never in the paper.
It never was, right? So, anyways, yeah, no, it was fun. It was interesting. The food seemed to be good, and it was only a mile from my house, so we had a lot of fun there. A lot of fun.
So because I do want to talk present day, but there's one more thing, Danny. You've been around the game of hockey much longer than Tim and I have at a professional level, and you spent some time in Florida, right?
Yeah.
And when you were with Esposito in Florida, when they launched the Lightning, and there are a lot of naysayers, non-traditional markets.
Right.
How's hockey going to work down there? Well, guess what? It's worked down there.
You think?
What did they do as an organization? What's the secret sauce we now have? What, 2 or 3 of the last Stanley Cups are in Florida?
5 of the last 6 years.
What's the secret sauce?
Obviously it's since I went there in 92, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was 92.
92 was when the Lightning came aboard. And I remember talking to Phil about an opportunity going down there. And he said, why the hell would you leave Buffalo? I said, well, I'm going through a divorce, unfortunately. He goes, oh, I get it. He had 2 already. So I go down there, and it was, something that I had a place in Florida. I loved the area. My kids came down for a while, and we were brand new, obviously in an area that was strictly football, baseball. Hockey was not. Although you had a lot of Northerners, from Toronto and New York, Detroit, whatever, Buffalo. So we had a staff of 4 people, and I was included in that. And when I got hired in the USA transactions, it was the longest, transaction note in regarding to my color analyst on television, street hockey advisor, ambassador, sales and marketing. It just went down because that's what we had to do. They didn't have a lot of money, so everybody chipped in. And I remember doing the first open house they had at Expo Hall, where they were playing that little rink there for 10,000 people their first year. We had an open house and people for tickets and season tickets. And my good friend John Swenson was he was the head of season tickets and sales. So I went there. And people, ask, do you have tickets near the dugout? Do you have tickets on the 50-yard line? They had no clue about hockey. So a big part of it, I think, was educating, fans that were down there, people that lived there. But once they saw the game, our very first game we played, we announced. It was a great opening night. Alan Thicke came in, the Esposito brothers. They had pyrotechnics, which you never saw back then, 30 years. It was amazing. There was still fog in the place. But we played the Chicago Blackhawks, who went to the finals and beat them 7-3. Chris Conto said, that place was nuts. And it's like hockey. Once you get engaged in it and you see it live,
right?
People, they jump to that, and it was new. So eventually that, and then I think with Mr. Vinnick buying the team in Tampa too down the road, what he did to expose the team marketing-wise, changing and adding to the arena, the new arena that came in there.
The arena and the neighborhood around the arena are great.
It's amazing, all the condos, but it was just. And winning, they had Stamkos, they had LeCavier, they had, Marty St. Louis. They had a good team and great coaching. Like I talked to Rick Dudley about it the other day. Rick was a former teammate, and he's with the Panthers. He just had the cup up in Niagara Falls. He's won 2 of them with Florida. And it's the same thing about ownership, good organizational staff, and great players. And it's really cool to see. I mean, for now that I live and I'm a resident of Tampa, of Florida, to see that happening.
Yeah. Well, it's great. It's great for the game, and it goes
to
show that But you brought up a good point. To appreciate the sport of hockey, you have to
be
see
there
it live.
No, and they couldn't believe this. Like women went nuts. Like it was like this game is, these guys are crazy. They go like this. And it was, it's entertaining. I mean, and when you win, I mean, it's been difficult for me to live in Tampa and watch what's happening here in Buffalo for the last 10 years. I mean, it's frustrating, but that's what has to happen back in Buffalo again, is, try to find some ingredients that can help move them forward and
create that
buzz
culture
again, like I had when I played here.
Well, when I moved here, and I told this to Tim, I mean, this is this is as good of a hockey town as anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
And when the team does
Yep.
turn around,
Yep.
wow, it'll be great.
Well, we talked earlier about the Bills and how the Bills, and God bless them. I love what's happening. It shows that this can't happen, because when I played, we were bigger than the Bills.
Sure.
They had OJ, they had the electric company, but it was like we were the town, the team in the town. And I guess, it's cyclical like anything else, but I mean, people here, if the Sabres get into a playoffs and start moving forward, this is, I just hope that it can maintain that ability to stay here in Buffalo until that happens.
Yeah, and there'll be a whole generation of fans
Oh,
who've
big
just
time.
never tasted that.
Right, exactly.
I remember when that happened with the Bills. 17-year playoff drought.
Right. Same
They
thing.
make it. Yeah,
Right.
somebody who was like 21 years old said to me, "Is this what it feels like?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Well, you were here in '99. You experienced it.
It was
with
every
I mean,
night,
come on.
every restaurant, every
Yeah.
bar. It was
Everywhere.
It was insane.
When you think about it, I was thinking about driving down here, the economic impact that sports does, as you know, for a city. I mean, look at what the Bills, if the Sabres, if we could ever get them all together winning, but even the Bills for what they're bringing in. And
Well, and the Bills are what, 8, 9 home games, 16,
Yeah,
17
it's not-
overall.
yeah,
But, you got 82, now going to be 84 nights.
42 home games. Yeah.
42
It's a
home
lot.
games, yeah. We want to get to present because I think this was top of our agenda. It's funny how we segue from a non-traditional hockey market with, in many cases, no ice, that being Tampa,
True.
to what you're doing now. And I think I'd like to talk to you a little bit, Danny. You're a partner
Yep.
in a company called Can Ice.
Can Ice, yeah.
Can Ice. So this is synthetic, non-frozen
Yeah.
ice. So just give our listeners background on Can Ice.
Okay. Been doing it for over a dozen years. When I left Columbus, it was my last broadcasting gig, kind of. I went to Tampa and got friends with a gentleman called Mike McGraw, my partner. He plays at the same golf course that I play at, and I was introduced to him by my friend Swenny again. And I was amazed at what he was talking about, because he was just in Norway at a convention, and he's in the sports servicing business for over 40 years at the time. He started with Monsanto back in the day, and they had some type of synthetic back then, but mostly it was AstroTurf, and he was the one that started AstroTurf. So the guy went to Cornell, or Columbia, I should say, smart Ivy Leaguer. And I was like, okay. I said, I don't mind, talking to you about it and getting involved. So I wrote down some things that I thought could help, in synthetic ice product. And so we brought it over for about 4 or 5 years. And my thing was, and I always said to Mike, synthetic ice is good. I used to shoot pucks off a piece of plywood with wax when I was younger. To get the feel of shooting 300-400 pucks a day when I was younger. And I always wanted to think that synthetic ice was about glide. It had to be similar to what the ice is, very similar, So we went around to a number of injection molders in Canada, the United States, looking for this hard type surface, acrylic almost, if you want to call it. And injection molding wouldn't do it. And I've learned a lot about polymers. I'm telling you about. I think I have a master's degree in this stuff after doing it for over a dozen years. But in saying that, we hooked up with a company in Tampa. We finally found this company that that did plastics, and they told me to bring my skates out, and they had some panels, and I skated on them in the glide, but it was manufactured different. It wasn't injection molded, it was heat plant press. So the polymers, and they had these machines that would just press down on it and make it hard, so when you put on your skates, you just glide over it. You just take off, and you could stop on it, no problem. And a lot of the times you'd get this dandruff from, and you'd also have to put this glide spray on it. So this stuff was all done inside of the panel, and it bleeded through the panel. So it was really the highest part of technology. They're probably one of the second largest plastics company in North America. So we've been using them as our manufacturer, and it's been unbelievable as far as development for the game, growing the game, especially in the Florida area and the hotter areas like Dallas or California. And even for a youngster, if I was a parent, what you're paying for ice times and travel teams and so forth and so on, Timmy, I'd get an area 20 by 20 where little Johnny can go down and skate and shoot in the basement or his backyard. So in that regard, it's been a very positive thing for me, because I think it's helping growing the game. We've talked to USA Hockey. I'm having a big meeting on Wednesday with Hockey Canada to talk about growth of the game and the costs of what it costs to build arenas. We've done a number of arenas that have redone their surfaces, and there's no refrigeration, there's no maintenance, and so forth. So my thing is, I wish I had this when I was a kid, to be honest with you. So we're very happy with the company. They can go to our website's www.can-ice.com. Check it out.
I've spent a lot of time on it, and so who is? I mean, there'll be a range of answers to this, but who is your target audience?
It's funny you say that. I think, God, we've had probably 2-3 dozen NHL players that use it. For training in their summertime. They build it so they don't have to go to the rink. They do all their skills, their stick handling, their inside outside edges, their shooting drills. I mean, that's a big plus for us. Crosby, Taves, I can go on Pavelski, Marchessault. All these guys are using it. Vasilevsky, Kucherov. And the other side of it is youth, kids, kids that are learning to play the game, or kids that are good at it. Residential areas, and a lot of it is institutional too. We do a lot of institutional for parks, recreations. I just see where West Seneca's they got turned down for $40 million. I'm gonna have to go talk to those boys, because this thing, it would be a lot more reasonable. And we've done a number of arenas because it's cheaper and it lasts, and it's no maintenance, and the glide factor now is almost similar to ice. So that's how my big thing was.
And I would encourage anyone out there who hasn't seen it. I mean, go find a Can Ice.
Go on the website or
go on the website.
Go check. We've got some great videos on there. There's we've got different types of sizes and different areas that you can just pop in, different pricing areas. We have a premier product. We have a product, Snipe Master, that's great for young kids. You can, a mom can snap it down and put it together. And
I think when you need a mallet, right?
Little rubber mallet.
Yeah.
Well,
not too bad.
It seems to me, as we talk about, we've had a few guests in over the last few months about different kind of sports complexes that municipalities are building, right? Whether it's soccer pitches, whether it's flag football fields. Right. It just seems, from a municipal perspective, having this surface is part of that overall youth sports.
And it combines to, like, you can do an ice rink, but add one of these on the side, like where it's much less, could be, much cheaper. Or we've done a lot of training centers, like across Canada and the United States, where people use it as an income. Kids can come in and shoot off it and skate off it, and they've had these stalls. But I think municipalities, for the costs and the problem of finding rinks, and the ability just to, have a functional area where you can do the same things as you can on ice for development. You know, I mean, I think it's all about development skill levels, and any time you use it, and cheaper for the municipalities. I mean, much cheaper than rinks.
Well, I know that, I'm involved in a couple of not-for-profit rinks, and
Yeah.
by far the number one expense is electricity,
refrigeration
to keep the chillers cranking.
Yeah.
So you eliminate that,
you do. You eliminate it. And the nice thing about it is, we did our first one in Old Bridge, New Jersey. It was an open air rink, okay, that was sponsored by the Devils. We put it in, and they use it all year round. I mean, all the summer times, the kids are in shorts skating on it. Wintertime they're playing games on it.
Yeah.
So.
Anybody? And we talk a lot about accessible sports. Have you ever seen sled hockey? They put sled hockey.
Sled hockey we're talking about because it doesn't the spikes on them. Okay, I've done it. I've used it. It does not get into the into the panel or dig into it like a skate does, because the polymers are they're virgin polymers, but they're high-end quality polymers, which is what you need in order to get the surface that hard.
Yeah.
So kids just fly over it. I mean, they're so light. They hardly I've skated on it. There's the odd little groove you get, because I'm a little bigger and push a little harder. But no, you can play anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John, have you skated on it yet?
I actually have, but it was
That was in our early years.
It was early generation,
Yeah.
early development,
Yeah.
and you would do a hockey stop, and there would be a little bit of shavings.
Right. Dandruff, we call
Right,
it.
yeah, but and it was great. I was blown away because this was actually on the beach in LA.
You could glide maybe 3-4 feet.
Yep.
On a push off.
Right.
9 now can go by 20.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just technology, Timmy.
Yeah.
And it's changing all the time. We're always trying to stay on top of it. But I'd match our product against anyone that's out there. Yeah.
No,
and I don't want to be a little biased, but
you get it. That's a bias.
but I've been doing
You
it
get
for
away
a
with
long
that.
time. I put my time in, my sweat equity. So, and it's been fun doing. I mean, I get to when I see guys like Kucherov put in his garage. I mean, this guy's the best. I went and cleaned out his old stuff that he had, and we put ours in. And it took me probably 20 minutes to get 500 pucks out of the net. That's how many pucks he shoots a day, like I was saying. And that's why he's one of the best players in the game. But he loved our ice,
Yeah, that's great.
Well, it's a bias you've absolutely earned. And Danny, it's the credibility is there, right?
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's great to hear about this. And, to John's point, if this is something that can continue to make this sport more accessible to kids.
Yeah. And growing in the game is what it's all about
yeah.
for me. I mean, like you say, we talked about the Tampa and I was the first announcer there. I was so proud of that. And I know that to see what as accomplished, in those areas where now we're doing it in Europe. We're talking to some people in Israel that want our product. I mean, it's just, I love the game of hockey. I've always loved the game of hockey. It's been great to me. So if this will give back a little bit, then fill our boots.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, thank you for contributing to the great sport of hockey.
Thanks, John.
For a few years, and more importantly, for continuing to grow the game. So I want to thank you for being with Tim and I here on Skin in the Game, and we'll be right back after this. Hey, welcome back to Skin in the Game, and I want to thank Danny Gare for joining us here.
That was a nice mix, John, of a lot of memories, a lot of nostalgia, but talking too about the cool things he's doing today. And it's hitting one of the themes you and I have really built on Skin in the Game, which is what can we do to make sports like hockey more accessible to kids? And we talk about equipment and coaching. Well, access to ice, or in this case, synthetic ice, can really do the trick.
He's such a great friend and ambassador for the game of hockey. And I think what he's doing now with Can Ice, and as you said, making the game of hockey more accessible, especially in some non-traditional markets, is great. So he continues to contribute to the sport that, as he said, gave him so much as well.
Yeah, and he knows those non-traditional markets as well as he knows the traditional ones. He played in some real, some of the biggest traditional hockey markets on this continent, but now he's living in Florida, at least splitting
Yeah,
his
yeah,
time.
splitting
right?
his time. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
splitting his time, but he's got a strong presence in Florida. He's worked there, and NHL hockey has been incredibly successful in Florida, or at least in parts of Florida.
Very.
What do you do? Yeah, what do you do to build that out from the youth level up?
Yeah.
And what Danny's doing and what that company's doing is a big part of that.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about a few episodes back. We had a whole roller hockey themed, right? And as I said, when I was in Los Angeles, roller hockey, well, street hockey, roller hockey were real gateways into building a passion for the sport. And I think what's happening with Can Ice and helping get the sport of hockey in some of these non-traditional markets is real similar to that. What I also thought, though, was fun, the conversation with Danny, was the trip down memory lane and the conversation when he was literally mowing his lawn, which sounds like a pretty big uphill lawn, when he got the call that he got drafted by the Sabres. Wow, have times changed?
Yeah. I mean, I knew that. I did not know that story. I know that drafts used to be incredibly low key, exciting when you got the call, like life changingly so, but not necessarily a big deal, And in a coming episode, we're going to have Katie Knoll from the Minnesota Frost with us, who also, I think about a year ago was drafted, and I'm sure her experience getting drafted to the PWHL was, not only life changing, but I'm sure a big deal for her and her family. And for Danny, it meant in the most immediate sense, it meant the lawn wasn't going to get cut quite as fast.
Right.
But he still finished it.
Yeah. Well, that was a great story. The one story we didn't get to with Danny that I just wanted to kind of highlight is he was talking to us earlier this year. He had time to reminisce. It was a reunion of the 1976 Team Canada team, which many have said is the best hockey team ever assembled. And he was in the room with legends, Serge Savard, Larry Robinson, Bobby Orr. I mean, the
Marcel,
Gilbert Perreault, and it was just great for him to get together with those guys and kind of relive those really historic moments. So for any of our Canadian listeners, the 76 team on their 50th anniversary did get back together in Montreal. And from what Danny said, everybody kind of picked up right where they left off.
And I would say go find the video that's out there, but it sounds like Danny might have been one of the only people actually shooting video at this reunion. So we may have to hit him up to share a little of that sometime. Yeah.
Well, and the last thing I just want to touch on is I think how you were chatting with Danny and how he quickly transitioned, once his on-ice playing days were over, how quickly he pivoted and found some mentors, but also found an opportunity to stay involved in the game, in this case, on the broadcasting side. So I just, we've talked to a lot of athletes, and back then there wasn't that kind of formal planning for your next stage, your next career. But it sounds like, again, with the support of a lot of mentors here in Buffalo as well as beyond, he was able to find that second career,
which is so important for athletes. Just like think of it this way: when you have young people who are graduating college, or might be, college could be several years, over their shoulder behind them. They need older people need mentors too, but especially people who are building a new career need that mentorship. That includes hockey players, athletes in their 30s, late 20s, who are ending one thing which could very much define their entire adult career, right? And you don't necessarily want it to do that. It might be the thing people remember you for, but you've got decades in front of you,
Right.
decades and decades in front of you, and you've got to be able to do something productive with it. I don't know what kind of money Danny made as a hockey player. I'm going to guess that he was not, knowing when he retired, he was probably not in a position to simply stop working. He probably had to do.
Nor, if you know Danny with his energy and
Would
his
he
passion,
stop working?
He would
Right.
not. He would not stop.
And I don't know
working.
him like you do, but that's obvious in about
Yeah.
within 3 seconds of meeting him that
Yeah.
this guy's not going to sit still.
Yeah.
But you want to do something productive and high level, and that's that athlete mentality. And as an athlete, you have coaches. As a professional, you go find mentors.
Right. So again, I want to thank Danny Gare for joining us on Skin in the Game, and I want to thank all of our listeners, and for myself and Tim O'Shei, thanks for joining us.